people think that a trading strategy has to be perfect.
Hey, it's Walter here, and you're at the Think Profit podcast, where we're going to help you develop a rock-solid trading confidence and avoid the potentially endless cycle of system switching. Right, Hugh?
That's right. We're going to help you develop a wealth mindset, develop a trading strategy that fits your core personality, and help you overcome the obstacles that stop over 90% of traders.
All right, Hugh, sounds good. You ready to go?
Yeah, let's do this.
Hey, Hugh, so I want to talk about something that I've seen quite a bit with some of the traders that I'm currently working with, like on the one-on-one coaching stuff. This is really interesting, and I want to get your take on it. So there's this idea that you can have let's say you have a system and you're comfortable with it and you're doing pretty good, but you just feel like you're just missing an element. Like you just want to get a little bit better at interpreting price action, or maybe adding another indicator or something, just because you're just, there's a few trades, too many losers. You're just trying to work out, how can I make this trading system better, right? I think this is kind of a common thing. And my question to you is, if a trader comes to you and says, look, I've got this strategy, it's pretty good, but I'm having, this problem with it. It's not quite where I want it to be. And I just want to be able to, do blank better, whatever that is, like use a better moving average setting, or interpret price action, or understand support resistance more, or supply and demand, or whatever. It doesn't really matter what they're saying, but what they're saying is that they're this close and they feel like if they just get that last element in, then all of their troubles are going to go away. So what do you say to that?
Yeah, that's a deep rabbit hole, right?
Yeah.
So the first thing that comes to mind is people think that a trading strategy has to be perfect. And I think that, I come back to this idea of fuzzy logic. Like, you can get the radio tuned to that station and it's, mostly good, but there's going to be a little bit of background static, but, that's good enough. You're going to listen to the program, you're going to get it. And that's where kind of people, I think, have to be with their trading strategy. It's not going to be perfect, but if you can get, 70, 80% of it dialed in, then you're good. You don't have to optimize it more. And then another thing I notice is that there's this very much like hindsight bias, and like trying to hindsight bias and a recency bias. So they look at their last trade and they think that they could have done better in hindsight, obviously, because you couldn't see what was going to go on, right? And then they think that they can tweak it a little bit more to make it perfect. Again, going back to the perfect thing. So I think that's a big thing. And the point that I would say is, it really comes down to like knowing who you are. It comes back to this idea of I am, right? Declaring your I am and standing in your lane, or whatever you want to call it, and just saying, okay, this is a strategy that works for me. It's mostly good. Either I'm going to just leave this on the side and trade this and then try something else, or understanding if that strategy doesn't work for you, it doesn't match your personality. And in that case, you might have to scrap it and try something else. But I think that's kind of what I've noticed. I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, that's great. So what was the first point you said? You were saying that
they're trying to be too perfect.
Yes. That I agree. Like that's part of it. It's like and certainly the hindsight bias and the recency bias can play into that, because you go back and you look at the charts and you say, well, if I had done this, then if I just looked at this, and so I feel like what's happening is they're trying to eliminate losses or mistakes either way, right?
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is you're putting all the focus on the mechanics of the strategy and trying to improve your skills, so to speak. Either one, it's kind of the same thing. Some people will talk about in terms of like adding another element to the strategy, and some people will talk about in terms of like, I need to get this much better at something, right? So it's the same thing. But so my thinking is along the same lines. Is I think that the perfection element, they need to let go of that. And so in other words, another way to say that is, it's a lot easier for you as a trader to let go of the idea that you need to successfully take every trade has to be a winner, or nearly every trade. It's a lot easier for you to get more comfortable with losing than it is for you to improve your win rate by 15%, right? Like that's an easier thing to do, and probably the thing that trading is trying to teach you. And so you can make your strategy better by looking at things like maybe a different exit approach, or maybe your risk rules should be changed. And there are other things you can do there, like elements like moving to break even, moving to break to 0.5 risk, so you're risking 50% of what your initial risk. There's all kinds of ways, or using some sort of element of a trailing exit. A lot of those things are really fruitful, and it's not going to be the entry or the way that you see the charts that's going to impact that. So that's the big one. I feel like a lot of traders, you're right, like the hindsight bias. I remember when I was trading or testing strategies before I had a simulator, like Naked Markets or Forex Tester or whatever. I would just go back on the chart and I'd scroll back as far as the chart would go, and I would record my trades on the chart in a spreadsheet or in a notebook that I would write out. And I was amazed at how often hindsight bias would creep in, because I'd take all these trades, right? And then I'd go back and look at them and just confirm that I, didn't miss any signals. And I missed, like, there's all kinds of crappy signals that would have been losers that I didn't take,
Yeah.
And it's so funny. Like, you think you're doing a good job, but you're not. Like, you're not at all. So yeah. So definitely the hindsight bias thing will creep in, and you're trying to retrade the last one. So my advice is usually, look, as long as this entry is giving you an edge, and there's ways to test that, right? As long as that's true, then what you need to do is you need to focus on everything else. You need to focus on on your psychology, on being okay with losing. Because if you're trading, especially if you're trading like currencies, you need to get comfortable with losing. That's a big part of the game, right? And so it really comes down to changing your focus away from entries, strategy, and more towards psychology and risk. And I know it's not sexy, but that's where you're going to get the biggest gains. And so, and also diversification. That's another thing that people forget about. They forget that, like, you're not going to just trade one strategy. You need other ones that are going to do better in different types of markets, so that these can kind of balance each other out and cancel out the worst of the time. So yeah, so it really does come down to these traders. And I had the same problem for years of thinking, like, oh, if I could just get this much better, or if I could just add this, or I'm always searching for something that'll filter out the worst trades or something. And yeah, it's a tricky thing to do, but it's usually not helpful, and it's more helpful to get into the other stuff that's probably not what you want to do. But eventually you'll get there. Like, the longer you trade, the more you understand how important risk and psychology is. Like, it just doesn't jump out at you when you first start trading. It's not the thing. The thing is the system. So we change over time, don't we?
Yeah. And I think one thing people have to understand is that the idea of perfection has been drilled into you since you were a little kid. In most countries, you take these multiple choice questions and you're trying to get the best score or perfect score. And then when you get a little older, you realize, no, there's not just one answer to that question. You could have written out multiple answers, and there's different ways you could have solved that problem. And that is a mindset that's a little hard to get over, I think, for a lot of people. So if you have to be okay with an answer that's good enough, or an answer that is right, but there could be other answers, but you're just going to stick to your answer because that's the one that makes sense to you. So I think that's an important thing to realize.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah. I try to drill that into my kids, like, that it's not just because it looks like that's the answer. There could be other solutions, and just how things change, like, over time. Humanity or different fields of sciences, wherever, they learn, okay, this was wrong. Okay, oh yeah, the Earth is not the center of the universe, or all these things change, right? And the perspective is different but you have to be open to new ways of looking at things, right? That's the thing. If you're not open to it, you'll never see it, and the Earth will be the center of the universe. So yeah, it's tricky. You gotta have that element of openness, and openness to new ideas. So that really helps. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Walter.
Thanks.
All information in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only, and is not trading or investment advice.